Welcome to another episode of Turning the Table, sponsored by Benchmark 60. Turning the Table is the most progressive weekly videocast for today's food and beverage industry, featuring staff-centric operating solutions for restaurants in the hashtag new hospitality culture. My name is Adam Lamb, and I'm a career coach for chefs and hospitality professionals, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Jim Taylor of Benchmark 60.
How you doing, Adam? Good
Jim,
to see you.
Great to see you. This is episode 114, the restaurant industry as an instant gratification feedback loop. And this is our monthly back of the house check-in episode because after all, you can't turn the table without everybody doing their part to make that happen. This Lunchbox live stream is broadcast every week on Thursday at 12 noon Eastern on the Turning the Table podcast page on LinkedIn, YouTube, and the Chef Life Coach page on Facebook. You can catch the podcast version everywhere you get your podcasts in 2 days. We ask that you share the show with someone you care about who can find this information useful and leave a review. And Jim, I think I kind of screwed up with the title of this show because it's kind of, I think, ambiguous about what the intent was. So before we bring in our guest, I wanted to kind of ask you one particular question. So, I've had this suspicion based upon my own experience that my career has acted as an instant feedback loop for me, for instant gratification, meaning. Mm-hmm. So it was a way for me to get this good feeling anytime I needed it by virtue of the fact that, it's an industry where for most of service staff, you get paid every day, cash money, walking out the door. Yeah. You put a great plate in the window and it kind of fills your heart because you know that's fantastic. Plus the feedback that you're getting almost constantly throughout the night, good or bad.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious because I didn't want to make this kind of a universal experience, but I'm curious to know if you've ever had that same feeling insofar as like using your career as a way to make yourself feel good, either in the moment or, maybe when things aren't going so great.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's hundreds of examples that we could probably come up with. I mean, put the perfect looking dish in the window, recommend the perfect entree to a customer, get a great tip. You're the manager of the place. You're hosting the party every night. Mm-hmm. You're the cool kid you're the cool kid. It's true, right? I mean, I can speak from experience on that. You open up a cool new restaurant in town and everybody wants to know who you are. I mean, it's a popularity contest in one way or another in that sense, right? There's so many examples of that. It doesn't have to just be the cash everyday side of things. Mm-hmm. It's a lot different, I think, than the experience that people get sitting in a cubicle where, once a month they have a little performance review or something. Mm-hmm. It happens every 10 minutes in restaurants.
Yeah. A very good friend of mine who's gone on to have a very fruitful career and is now an executive chef at one of the biggest hospitals in Hawaii, started his career in Chicago and where I met him, and he was such a freak. He was so good. And he took it like not seriously at all. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you could really do this. Chef James Shirley. And in a podcast episode, he goes on this little rant saying, at work, you could be the hero. And then at the end of the shift, you're taking an L home by yourself to a crappy little apartment. And and that kind of spurred a thought at me, like, okay, so why wouldn't you want to spend all your time at work? Right? Because that's where you feel good. Yeah. And there's more to get into this. And we have no idea, just to put it out there, we have no idea where this is going to go. And we don't want to make anybody wrong because this show was established about solutions. And yet you can't really talk about a solution until you're really clear about what the problem is. So to that point, I want to bring in our good friend, Culinary Coach Simon Zatyrka, who's joining us from Pacific Coast, right?
Yeah, Seattle.
Good
morning, gentlemen.
Gloomy? Is it gloomy out there, man?
Let's see. One window has got clouds, and the other one's got sun. So, sorta. I don't know, man. It's Seattle. Like, you never know what's gonna happen. Just wait a second.
Right. So, there's a couple different ways that we could language this, and I don't want to muddle it. I want to be as clear as possible. So I guess I want to start with the question, which is, thanks to organizations like the Burn Chef Project, Not 9 to 5, and several others that deserve to be named, there has been a concerted effort to study the hospitality industry in regards to things like mental health crises, substance abuse. Because prior to almost just 5 years ago, nobody gave a shit. I mean, sure, people gave a shit, but nobody could actually quantify the problem because nobody was given money to study the problem. And if you can't quantify it, you can't study it. So these organizations have done amazing work to put together all these surveys. And again, it comes back to this truth that I think all of us know inherently, which is the hospitality industry has one of the highest incidents of substance abuse, addiction. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a challenging industry.
Suicide.
Front and center.
And just thinking about all the friends I've lost in my career. And so why do you think that is? Why do you think that there is such a high incidence of these experiences in this career field? Chef?
Man, that's such a big question. But here I'll dive off with this. I was a 19-year-old college student that dropped out of college to hang out with a merry band of misfits every night. Right? I mean, come on, it's community in the best and worst way, right? Like you're like slinging, 400, 500 steaks a night, and then at the end of the night, someone says, "Hey, let's go have a beer," and one beer becomes 10. And God only knows what else is happening.
Sure.
But it's fun and it's great. And let's go back to like the instant gratification of, and feedback. Hello, adrenaline. How are you? Right? Like this is just boom, boom, boom. This is great. I mean, are you kidding? I literally dropped out of school to cook so that I could like feel that every day.
No.
And then found that like I had a group that like, that were like, hey, let's go hang out. Let's go do stuff. Not really pulling back the curtain for a number of years, but that for me is like the gateway to it all. People start to, they have community but they also have like, I guess the anti-community, right? Like the things that can go dark. I think it's prevalent. I think it happens a lot. Folks, they get into something and then, the next thing you're into other stuff. So I think that it's just such an easy thing to slide off the edge of.
So do you think that for a certain portion of us, our community, that they're already kind of pre-wired for that type of behavior, given the fact that, all of a sudden you've got this great feeling all night long, and then at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock you punch out and you're supposed to go home, and that's it? Like, I mean, is there something about us that kind of drew us to this industry because that's what we needed in our lives?
I definitely think there's that aspect, but I also think that it's chefs who are pushing people hard. Right. And so you want that. You want a relief. I mean, I worked for a chef in LA, and on his wall, it said, "You are only as good as the last plate you served." Right. That's pressure to keep up with. So I think that, yes, there's some pre-wiredness, I guess if that's a word. But also it's a culture of like pushing people hard. And at some point, something's got to give. Right. And I think I've seen some change in culture over the years. I'd like to believe that some people have seen the harmfulness of all that and are able to go, gosh, we should be a little bit less chaotic. Right? We should start to hone and rein things in. I mean, myself, for me, it was like finding some organization in the chaos.
Sure.
I mean, that's how I swear to you, like I started to manage my way out of the chaos. I got tired of going to work and working for super talented chefs who had these amazing ideas but could not get things together. I started just going, hey, let's make a list. Like let's have series of lists, and like let's be organized and let's get planned. That's how I work my way out of the chaos. But it's not, it takes some time and effort.
Jim, do you want to speak to that question? Because I'm interested in your insight in regards to why do you think that there are such high levels of emotional dysfunction in our industry?
Well, that concept of pre-wired for instant gratification, I don't know if it's pre-wired for instant gratification, but it's definitely in countless cases that I can, both personally and with friends, it's definitely pre-wired. I mean, think about the people that the industry hires or looks for. It's outgoing, social, fun, competitive, and I think for me personally, the two that probably stood out the most that both helped me be really successful in restaurants and also put me in some probably not ideal situations were social and competitive. Right? The social scenario, I get hired at a new restaurant when I'm, what Simon just mentioned about dropping out of university. I did the same thing. I was, getting ready to pursue a degree or something, got a job because my high school grad date was working at the restaurant. She said, hey, come work here. It's full of cool, fun people.
Right.
And I stayed for 20 years.
Yeah.
But, I think the social side of it was I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be invited. I wanted to be, and if that meant going to the bar after the shift, or if that meant going to a house party after the shift, or if that meant going to the bar cooler after the shift, I was in. Right. And so for me, that's part of it. And the competitive side of it, I mean, in my experience, and I know a lot of people front of house and back of house would probably say the same thing. You put someone in a social situation where they're getting invited to do things and they're a competitive person, look out.
It's interesting that you brought up that kind of personality profile, because I experienced this over the weekend. I spent last weekend in Nashville at a huge convention hotel. I had never been there before, and I went to go get breakfast, and there was this young lady at the host station, and very demure. Her shoulders are almost bowed. She's almost trying to hide herself from a physical standpoint, and wouldn't look me in the eye. I'm like, one for breakfast, please. And as I'm sitting there enjoying my lovely hotel buffet breakfast, as they always are, right about 9:30 while the eggs are starting to harden, I see another hostess who's obviously coming on for the day shift, and she is bubbly and smiling and talking to everybody. And I thought to myself, maybe maybe she's the right person, but she's in the wrong position, right? Like, again, and the question this has come up for me is, as leaders in the hashtag new hospitality culture, understanding post-COVID that everything's changed, do we have any responsibility, ethically or morally, to support our staff to make good choices for themselves, right? There's one thing to teach them the skill set to do the job. And then what's going on in the storeroom, after a certain point in time, or in the staff bathroom or whatever, because at one point I was there, right? So do we have any responsibility morally or ethically to mentor that portion of their personality and assist them to become mature professionals, so that it's not so much the instant gratification, but to start to understand that really the trick is delaying gratification, putting in the work in order to reap bigger rewards? Is that kind of, I guess that's the crux of it for me. Chef?
I think absolutely we do. I mean, for me, the hospitality industry, the restaurant industry, the kitchens, whatever aspect or arena, it has always been for me, and it will probably always be community, right? It's a group. Again, Band of Merry Misfits, which sounds cute and fun, and it's Peter Pan, but at the same time, it's like a group of people that have got to go in and do a job, and if they're all linked of mind and able to focus, then like things get better, right? Like at the end of the day, if we're all honest, it's about making a little more money, and so I think if if a youngster who's going down a path that isn't great can get a little like shoulder and grab and back into the fold, like they're gonna do better. They're gonna progress. They're gonna hopefully make their team a little bit better, which is gonna make the restaurant a little bit better, which is gonna make the owner a little more money, and then we're all gonna keep kind of flourishing. And then people start to move on in their career and understand that we all have to take care of each other, right? It isn't just the it's not just all me. It's got to there's got to be some hugs and some shoulders kind of pulling people in.
Yeah, but to your point, it wasn't that long ago when you were in a kitchen and there was a sign on the wall that said, you're nothing, right? You're only as good as your last dish. Well, what the hell does that mean about me in the present moment, right? So there's this kind of, and I know this is going to get tricky, man, but it seems to me that as the dinosaurs in the group, that there's a generational question that needs to be answered if we're going to be effective. And when I mean effective, I mean like be truly great leaders and, be there for our staff. Because I think the only measure of your performance is how many leaders have you created, helped to create. So, Jim?
Yeah, the moral and ethic thing, I mean, I think we have a mentor maturity for sure. I mean, I think the way, and Adam, you and I have talked lots about this in the past, is I think the way that I view it is actually more about protecting people that work in our industry from the things that we all know exist in it.
Right.
And I think whether that's, I'm not a wage lobbyist, but whether that's paying people more so they don't have to work 60 hours a week and burn out, and then, find ways to hide from that, whether that's providing, different types of benefit or education or, all these different things. Because if we don't do it, then someone's going to, either a government, another industry, another company is going to provide for people in a way that maybe, some people in our industry just don't believe it should be provided. So I think it's more about protecting the people that are going to be the future of our industry. That's something that I mean, Adam and I've talked about that. That's something that I believe really, really strongly.
Right. Chef Tiffany Jeffries is chiming in to say we absolutely have moral responsibility to help younger/newer cooks navigate the potential pitfalls and pigeonholes we know may ensnare them. And thank you for that comment. And yet I know from my own experience, from being the youngling to trying to mentor other younglings, that sometimes, man, you just can't tell anybody shit, right? Because they know. I'm thinking specifically of two guys who I knew at a same resort, sharpest edges in the drawer, by far the most talented and with the most potential. And they had been, either fed a line of crap or had been listening to their own press releases. But my advice at that time completely fell on deaf ears. And they both got bounced out for various things. The funny part of that is 15 years later, I'm actually coaching and mentoring one, which for me has been an amazing experience, and I'm very grateful for that. But I know at the moment, sometimes people just don't want to listen. Chef, have you ever had that experience of like, yeah, chef, I got it. I'll be good, man. I'll be good.
Yeah, I don't have enough fingers to that, man. I mean, it's something about horses and water. I mean, you can take them down the line. You just got to keep trying. I think that somebody once said, man, as the chef, that's such a great job. And I'm like, yeah, it can be great. But I think that it's a certain amount of modeling, like the benefits, the advantages, it's got to look like a good job, because otherwise folks, they start to get lost. They gotta have something to aspire to. So I think for me, it's some of it is, good role modeling and being consistent, because I think if you can say anything you want, and sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. I mean, I had one guy who, like, I gave him the advice and he went off and he did something, and about 6 months later he comes back to me and he goes, "You said A, B, and C were going to happen, and God, A, B, and C happened." And he goes, "I'm going to listen to you from now on." So, I get lucky once in a while, right? But it's just one of those things. Like,
I guess,
yeah, they're not always going to listen, but I think that if we do our best every day, then you just got to hope.
I guess
you got to hope you're modeling the right thing for them.
I guess ethically, then I would say, listening to you, that we definitely have a responsibility to coach and mentor leadership, mature professionalism, regardless of what the outcome is. Because the other side of that is, at some point in their career, something's going to happen to trigger a memory. They'll go, well, wait a second, where else did I hear that? Because I've had lots of guys come back and go, or not guys, but lots of chefs that have, or associates that have gone on to become chefs, come back and say, "You know what, chef, at the time I didn't get it. I didn't understand what you were saying, but now I get it." And Jim, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there still seems to be some folks out there who are unclear on the concept that this is a new dynamic in our operations, in which we get to invest both from a time standpoint and an emotional contract with our associates. Way different than what it used to be, right? Because as chef related, you're coming in there to, either keep moving mission forward, or you're either on our bus or you're out walking. And that was it, cut and dry. Yeah. And now it's like, and it's sure, some things force our hand, right? Staff retention, lots of people leaving the industry. But I got to think, man, at some point, like, this should have been our responsibility all along.
Totally. It's I don't know. It's not our responsibility to do it, but if we want the industry to continue to thrive in any way at all, we better do something about it.
Yeah, I think
there's going to be operators, and there's going to be people in our industry, and that don't think that things need to change, and that's fine. They'll be on their path and they'll do their thing, right? But speaking about the labor shortage, for example, I actually personally, and this one's created a little bit of controversy in the past, and you and I've had a good laugh about this, Adam. Simon, I don't know if you and I've talked about this one, but I actually don't think that there's a labor shortage at all. There's a retention shortage.
Yeah.
Because for the last 40 years, or maybe longer, you're only as good as your last plate. Well, your last plate wasn't good. See you later. Someone else will take your spot tomorrow.
Correct.
Right? Whether we force them out or they leave on their own, the turnover rate of 110% or whatever it was annually, that's always been there. Well, now there's no one to take their spot. So if we don't look at it differently in terms of how to retain people, mentor people, help people, actually put them in a position where they can be successful, I don't know what that leads to other than a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Not even quite sure if that needs follow-up, because it's pretty succinct, right? Because everybody wants to make it up about one thing, but it's really, and thank goodness, right? Thank goodness that we're in a position where, if we're a mature professional, we have the capacity to be in the inquiry, step back and actually take a look at it without taking it as a personal front, right? That it's, oh, me or whatever. Thank goodness that we're at a point where there are operators and folks like, Jim, Simon, myself. We're going to have a couple more here in the next couple of weeks, which is going to be amazing, coming on the show, who, if they're not of the same mind, they're headed in the same direction, which is our culture gets to be one of sustainability, equity, and inclusiveness. And for a long time, it hasn't been. So because we're a solution-based show, and someone's going to go walking back into their organization, and whether or not they're pissed off at who's showing up or not, chef, what's one thing that they can do to at least try to create a shift in their current culture, such that their staff really get that they give a shit about them?
I mean, I think the number one thing is the big C, right? Like communicate. You know, check in. You know, for me, it goes back to communicate and community, right? Like check in with your people and make sure that they're okay. I think that if everybody is kind of in the fold, they're likely to feel like they have a place to be. You know, the place where they can learn, where they can continue to grow, where they can make their paycheck safely. You know, I think that's a lot of it. But I think it's just really about good, healthy, respectful communication.
I love that you just throw that safety thing out there of kind of like it's a throwaway line, like safety. Yeah. You know, well, listen, in a world where the last 3 years has not been safe for anybody, right? I mean, when are we actually going to get like, oh my God, yeah, safety, that is a thing. Like not only physical safety, but emotional safety. And I'm not necessarily talking about, you know, patting them on the butt and telling them how special they are, but, you know, treating everybody fairly with a firm set of standards that everybody can look to in order to gauge their own performance, right? And Jim, we talked about this before getting on the show, and I just want to make sure that our listeners and viewers know that this is not a generational question, okay? Because everybody said the same shit about the boomers. Everybody said the same shit about, you know, Gen Xers, the millennials, the Gen Cs. I got a prompt in my email box to submit a post to LinkedIn about how to, let me see if I can read this correctly, something about how to support Gen Zs in building skill sets. And I'm like, why is that even a question? Anyway. And I ask you, Jim, because I know that you're kind of the master of the undersell, and I think that works really, really well. No. Listen, I mean this as a compliment, because your way of being is such that being calm and understated, especially in an environment like this where there's so much at risk. That one of the reasons I got so emotional at the top of the show was, you know, this. Sorry, I've been sick for a couple of days. I'm a little emotional. Okay. You know, this industry's been amazing for me. I love it. I love it. And I want to see it continue. Mm-hmm. And I want to see it get better. And I want to see it, you know, I want everybody back in the pool because, Simon, to your point, it's safe and the water's just fine. But they're not going to, based upon our ways of being. And I put our arms around all of us and said, yeah, man, we created this situation, so it's up to us to solve it. So, Jim, for someone walking back in their operation after, you know, this little hashtag lunchbox live stream, and they're scratching their head like, how the hell am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. Like, how would they take one step towards creating a more cohesive environment for their staff, so that they know that they're cared for and that this is the place for them to be, because it's not about money anymore.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, first of all, I think what Simon said about community and communication is, I mean, you're bang on, Simon. I mean, that's totally, talk to your people, right? Check in. A few of my former colleagues and I used to have this kind of running joke, but not really a joke. And that was that when you step on shift, whether you're the chef, the sous chef, the manager, the GM, the bar manager, the district manager, whoever it was, it's someone of responsibility. The running thing was that we actually used to ask each other, have you put on your cape yet? You know, if someone was having an off day or, you know, someone was acting a little off, you know, hey, did you forget to put your cape on today? Because, and this is a cheesy sort of thing, right? But the idea was you have to look for opportunities to be somebody's hero when they come to work in your environment. And so that's the cheesy version of it. But I think, you know, one of the things that I like that we were talking about earlier before the show was that, you know, the generational side of things and all the stuff that's going on in our industry right now, it's nobody's fault that this stuff is happening. It's, you know, Gen X was an issue, millennial was an issue, you know, Gen Z is now being called an issue, and it's not their fault. It's just that our industry doesn't know how to deal with it yet. So I guess my advice, and if I was still operating restaurants, I'd go into the weekend thinking about, I'm going to just try and come up with one way to help make those people, feel better at work every day, enjoy the job better, protect their experience, support them, whatever it is that I could do. Because it's not their fault. It's nobody's fault.
Right. And in doing research for this particular episode, I came across a new tab that I didn't see before at the Burnt Chef Project. So they partnered with this organization called Peopleful. So pleased to announce it has partnered with Peopleful to offer a powerful data insight tool designed for the first time to show you where your biggest fires are in terms of health, culture, and well-being, and accurately demonstrate the costs associated by not addressing these areas. So they answer two fundamental questions. How psychologically fit are my people? Can they perform at their best? And is our working environment designed to support excellent performance? And for those of you who are interested in this, I'm going to make sure that the link is in the show notes because you can book a free demo, and any tool that you can deploy to make sure or towards the end of like making sure that you have a cohesive, supportive environment, I think is powerful because we all have blind spots, right? And so before we leave, I just wanted to say thank you so much for Jemiah, Aaron Fish, Chef Tiffany, and all the other listeners who supported us by checking out the live stream and, throwing their 2 cents in with the chat because it helps to spice up the conversation. Chef Simon, how can people get a hold of you? Because we launched right into this. I didn't do an intro for you or anything, man, so I apologize.
LinkedIn's pretty easy. But to spell my last name is Zatyrka. The other one is my new website, and it is www.culinarymechanic.com.
There you go. Culinary Mechanic. I love that, brother.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to tear it apart and put it back together faster and smoother.
Don't we know that? Don't get paralyzed by the analysis, my brother. Something, done is better than perfect, from what I understand. Someone told me that.
Yep.
Jim, any final words for us?
I don't know, man. There's a lot going on in my mind right now, right? But I think just there's some loud and clear message from our conversation today, and that's just we got to take good care of the people working in our industry if we want them to stay. So. Right.
And that's why I'm so tickled, every week to be in this conversation with you, because Benchmark 60 does have one of the most unique systems out there that has been shown to be wildly effective. And for more information about that, all you need to do is check out the show notes. All the links will be there. Thanks very much, everybody. We could be doing this for another hour, but we respect your lunch break, and you got to get your ass back to the shop. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your day, and we'll talk to you soon.